Go ahead, Dave.
No
What were you
problem.
saying?
Uh, so we've been doing this, and during this, we've had this number up here. People have asked some questions. So some of the questions we have, we already have ready to go. They were texted in earlier, but that is live. So if you send me a question right now, it will come up on my screen. So as we're doing this, if you have a question that you want answered, we'll tackle them. No, if everybody sends in like 12 questions, obviously we'd love to be here all day. It won't happen. But we are going to attempt to tackle those in some form or fashion, maybe throughout the next couple of weeks, whether it's online or through an email or something like that. So, but we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Cool.
Questions.
What do you think about aliens?
Why are we starting with that one?
Because I want to.
Okay. There you
If
go.
aliens were shown to all humans one day, would you as a pastor believe it?
I don't know. I don't. Apparently, there's something in the news this week. I don't watch the news, so I don't know. And I asked Dave. I said, Did they prove aliens are real in the news? He said, yeah. So I don't know. Dave, can you said you had a bunch of stuff on aliens. So
Well,
go
I mean,
ahead.
I could talk about it all day. I think,
Okay.
so, who do you believe? But, yeah, I think aliens are absolutely real, 100%. Thanks.
All right. Another Star
So there
Wars
was
fan agrees. They're like, yes.
Awesome. So there was, just real quick, there was a Congress, hearing on, they don't call them UFOs anymore. They're called something else, UAPs, right? Yeah. So that's apparently changed now. But there's a lot more evidence for that than Bigfoot. So I'm there for it.
All right, nice.
Yeah.
I think Bigfoot is probably real.
And also too, if the question is funny, if aliens were shown to all humans one day, would you as a pastor believe it? Yeah. I mean, if they
'Cause
came down and they were
they're
like,
right
"Hey,
there."
we're aliens,"
I'm
yes,
like,
I
well,
believe it.
I guess you're real.
You're real, and I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna die soon.
Yeah, I think probably the tension there is some Christians don't believe that aliens are real. Some do. For me, I believe that God created this world. That the story and the narrative we have is that what God is doing here on this planet in this world, and so that's what I know. But yeah, if aliens came down and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, we're aliens," I'd be like, "All right, well, God has some other
Made
thing
you
that
somewhere
he's
else
doing."
then, yeah.
I don't know.
That's-
So, and I think a person can believe in aliens and be a Christian, and I think a person cannot believe in aliens and be a Christian. So,
I agree.
yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
So we'll get into some other stuff. So
I feel like I didn't
here's a good
have
one.
a strong answer for that.
Here's a good one. So going along with this series of questions you don't ask and people seeking, how do we handle believers that they would claim an active relationship with Christ, but yet they continue to choose a life of sin?
Yeah, that's a good one. Man, I used to work at the YMCA years ago when I was in college, and I was sitting there afterwards with this one lady who worked there, and we were sitting there, I think, as we were closing up the YMCA, and she was talking to me about, she found out, I was going to Bible college, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus," and she was going off telling me about how Christian she was and how much she believed in Jesus, and then she got a phone call from somebody, and as we were leaving, we were walking out in the parking lot, she was like, "Listen here, MFer, I told that MFer," and she was like just cussing and going off on the phone, and I was like, "Way to follow Jesus," and then I kept going, but that was something that struck me as like, wait, hold on, you say like, I follow Jesus, I'm a Christian, I believe, but then you're like going off on somebody, cussing them out on the phone. That just isn't congruent with what we believe. So what's up with that? And that was when I was in college. I'm now older and a different person. But one of the things that I've first, when it comes to something like this, is I just remind myself that I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
and I don't have it all together. And so I'm very aware of my flaws and my shortcomings before I approach anybody else. So I am aware that I do not have it all together, and I think that's key.
Yeah.
In approaching somebody, understand you don't have it all together. What we know, though, is that we can tell a tree based on the fruit that it bears, right? Jesus talked about this in Matthew chapter 7. If you want to see who somebody really is, look at the fruit of their life, because their actions, their deeds, how they operate really comes from what's within them. And so just look at people's fruit, and are they bearing the fruit that comes with following Jesus recklessly? And what is the fruit of following Jesus? It's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. This is the fruit of the Spirit found in the book of Galatians. So I'm going to look at that. If I don't see that fruit, then I'm going to ask questions. And so oftentimes I'll just ask questions where I'll bring scripture to somebody and I'll say, hey, you believe this, but you do this. Help me understand how you hold this scripture in your hand and then also this action in the same hand. Because I don't see how that happens. Can you help me understand how you can align those two things? And now what I've done is I've put the burden on them to explain what they're doing. Or I've just maybe brought something to light that they didn't see to their attention, so that now they have to wrestle with that and they have to try and figure out, oh yeah, why do I do that? I mean, I say I believe this, but I do this. And then what it comes down to is, what do you really believe? Do you really believe what you say you believe? Because your actions are showing something different. And ultimately it's on them to choose what they're going to do. Because another thing I've discovered is I can't change anybody.
Yeah.
No matter how much I want to try, I cannot change anybody. People have to change themselves. And so I may want something so bad for you, but if I want it more than you, then I'm going to, if I worry about it too much, then I'm going to wreck myself. And I just have to realize I can't change you. It's up to you to do that. My job is to love you. And then also just ask the question, I see this, you say this, it doesn't seem to line up. What's happening there? And sometimes, and Jesus talks about confronting someone. Matthew 18:15, he says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you've won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to them. If they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. So how do you treat pagans? Because you know some of those, right? No. But yeah, so in those instances, again, I'm just going to go to somebody. My goal is to help people see the light and to become more like Jesus. So I'm just going to ask, how does this line up? And hopefully that changes for them. If it continues on and it's such a big deal, then I might bring some other people and say, hey, we love you. We care about you. Like, we want to help you. And if they don't listen, then at that point, too, I begin to set boundaries. And it's like, I'm going to let you do you. I'm going to do me. And hopefully one day a change will happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. We had a couple come in while you were talking, and they're kind of related to one that had come in earlier during the series. And it's this question of, what's the best way to get into reading the Bible and understanding it? Or someone else asked, if you're new to reading the Bible, where would you suggest to begin?
Yeah, I think, so one of the best ways to get into reading the Bible is to just start doing it, just like you do anything else. What's the best way to get into working out? Just go to the gym. What's the best way to, so just start doing it, and I'd recommend that you start in the book of Mark. It's 16 chapters, so it's a short book. It's quick. As you begin to read the book of Mark, you'll notice that Mark uses language like immediately and at once. And what you find as you read through Mark is like, and then Jesus did this, and then boom, here's this thing that happened, and then he went there. And so it's really action-packed. It's fast-paced. It'll keep you going. So I'd say start in the book of Mark, but you got to be intentional about it. You got to plan it, because if you try to find time to read the Bible, you won't find it. You got to make time. So I'd encourage you, put it on your calendar. Make an appointment with God. I'm showing up at this time. I'm going to do it. For me, I read the Bible and spend time with God and prayer in the morning. So before our kids wake up, I got some coffee. I'm reading the Bible. I'm praying, because I realize if I don't do it then the rest of my day is going to just take my schedule away. So I have created a habit now where in the morning, before anything else, I'm taking time to read the Bible and pray. So you got to make it a habit. You got to put it on your calendar. Do it early in the morning. Start with Mark. And the Bible is a collection of books where the more you read it, the more it'll start to make sense to you. And so it won't make sense at first, but you just stick with it and just keep reading. And then as you read something, you'll notice, oh, wait, I read that like 4 weeks ago, and it kind of relates to this. And then you'll start to put all these pieces together. And so that's really intriguing as well. I'd encourage you also, as you read the Bible, write down questions that you have, and then ask those questions. Ask some people, I was reading this, I don't understand this. Can you help me understand this? And that'll help you as well.
Yeah.
So,
And if I could add to that, I
Yeah.
think something that I wish I would have learned a lot earlier is that there are extra biblical resources that help you understand that as well. So I think what you're saying is absolutely correct, 100%. I think there's also, right now, like we have so many tools that you can use to help understand even further. Because you can read it in English and get a ton out of it and understand a lot of it, but then if you read it and you have a more Middle Eastern mindset and as to how they wrote it, how they structured it, a lot of other things start to come into play. And you really start to see a lot of interesting nuances or interesting things that maybe you would miss just reading it from somebody growing up in the U.S. So there's a lot of really cool stuff. There's podcasts. There's all kinds of tools that you can use. YouVersion Bible app is a free one where you can have it on your phone, on your iPad. Bible Gateway is a website where you can go and you can look up stuff based on like, hey, I think there's some verses that talk about this, and so you just type that in and it does a search for you and it'll show you what has those words in there. There's all kinds of tools that you can use to help with that. But the key point is you got to start. You got to start. And don't be intimidated. No one expects you to be an expert. Like when you go into it and you read something, you're like, well, I don't know, I'm going to give this up. Like there's no way. It's with everything, right? If you start something for the first time, you're not going to be an expert. Nobody expects you to be an expert. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes discipline to get into it, to continue doing it, to continue seeking, continue reading. So,
yeah, I think also keeping in mind that the scriptures were written to real people in real places at real times. And so as you read through the scriptures, it's thinking, all right, who wrote this? So if you're reading through the book of Matthew or Mark, well, Mark wrote this. Well, who is Mark? Well, let me find out. And then you could just Google, who was Mark? You got to be careful some of the stuff you read, though, because some people, I don't know, it's not right. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. But who wrote this? Why are they writing it? Who's their audience? What's happening here in this moment? And maybe just read a passage several times. So you mentioned extra biblical resources. That's extra biblical things outside of the Bible. A book is Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus.
That's great.
And so, like I have it on my iPad. I've read 2% of it, though. So maybe you want to look into that just to see the times and the things that were happening during that time. So anyway.
Yeah. That's good. This one was texted in, and there's a couple of them. Same person. Do you think at your lowest point in your life, he will bless you and forgive you for your lies? So I'm assuming he, meaning God. And the follow-up to that was, if you have been told that you're not loved, I'm assuming it means you're not loved, can God love you? So these both came from the same person.
Yeah. So at your lowest point in your life, say the first one again.
Do you think at your lowest point in your life, he will bless you and forgive you for your lies? If you've been told that you're not loved, can God love you?
Yeah. Oh, man. So we all have messages that we believe about ourselves. And those messages were given to us, parents, from our friends, from school, from society. And you can think back to when you were young. So some of what you deal with right now, if it's identity issues, if it's am I good enough, am I loved, you started asking that question when you were 6 years old, when your dad was just annoyed with you. He's like, I told you for the 18th time to put this thing up. You can't do anything right, or whatever the message is. And so what that message was to you was you're not good enough. And throughout your life, you came across other instances of that where even now as an adult, you're struggling with that. And it goes back to what happened when you were 6 years old, and you're believing that message, and you're telling yourself that message over and over again. And this is why the work in Crucible is so great. And if you have not signed up for Crucible, you need to do it. Crucible is a men's, and there's also a women's retreat. where they center around soul work for the weekend, and it just helps you discover who you really are, and to uncover some of the messages and the lies that you've been telling yourself and believing about yourself. But it's going back and doing work and telling that 6-year-old, because there's a little 6-year-old girl or boy inside of you who's thinking, I'm not good enough. It's telling that little 6-year-old, you are good enough. And it's you protecting that 6-year-old when nobody was there to protect them. It's, man, they're so that's the short of it. You're believing messages about you that were handed to you by somebody or that you adopted for yourself. And then when it comes to God, it's looking at the God of the universe, your heavenly Father. And if you're a parent, you better understand this. Will God forgive me at my lowest? Yeah, because you're his son, you're his daughter, and he loves you. What if I feel unloved? You need to know that you've been believing some lies, and the message that God says to you, if you're a Christian, is the same message that he says to his son Jesus when he was baptized. And he said this is my son, my beloved son, with whom I'm well pleased.
Yeah.
And if you're a Christian, God says the same message to you. This is my son, my beloved son. You're the apple of my eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I love you. And I'm pleased with you. And that's a message you got to adopt and know and let it be the center of who you are. So will God forgive you? The truth is, he already forgave you on the cross. When Jesus went to the cross, he took all of your sin and my sin on himself so that when he died, our sin died. So you have already been forgiven. You don't need to be forgiven again. You just need to accept the forgiveness and live in it and embrace it and know that it's for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would also just add some encouragement that if whoever this is, and if there's other people that are feeling that way, I just want to let you know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
In feeling that.
Oh yeah.
There's a good possibility there are other people in here that are feeling that. Chances are better than high that most of us have felt that at one point. So I would encourage you to keep showing up. At the bare minimum, show up here on Sundays, hoping, expecting to hear something from God. Because just like James said, God loves you. God has a plan for you. God cares about you. And he has something that he wants to say to you. I believe that God is speaking all the time, but we're not listening all the time.
Yeah.
And when we show up hoping and expecting and saying, God, just speak to me, I think more often than not, he's speaking to us already. We're just listening to the wrong messages or not listening at all. And so just show up. Don't be invisible. Find somebody, connect with us. If you've never connected with us before, we've got a connect form in our app. And show up and just be a part of this community because we love you and we care about you and we want the best for you. Our mission as a church is to see people meet Jesus and journey with him because we want you to discover the more that you were made for. You were made for more than just existing.
Yeah.
You were made for more than just being told that you're not loved. You were made for more than that, and so keep showing up.
And I think so showing up on Sunday is really great, but you got to take it to the next level to
Sure.
get into a group or to start serving, because that's when you're going to build relationships with people and have great conversations with people. And so like this morning, I was able to talk with Tori for a little bit and just ask her some questions. I was able to talk with Chad for a bit and ask him some questions and just hear about some things going on in his life and her life. I was able to, Joaquin, who's playing electric guitar up here, I was able to talk with him and just hear some of his story. And so as you serve and as you get in groups, like you have a chance now to have conversations with people and share your life and share your story. And that's going to help you break through some various things. Man, there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. So it was really important. It was like the thing I was going to say was going to change everybody's life. And I totally forgot it. So if I think of it, we'll come back to it.
Darn you, Satan. So going in this vein, I think this connects pretty well to that. One of the questions that we got was, how do you keep your faith?
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
There you go.
Here's what I was going to say.
You just needed me.
So remember that, how do you keep your faith? But so this whole thing, for me, I mean, this is me. like struggling with insecurity and feelings of inadequacy. I grew up without my biological dad in the picture. And so I was looking for love. I was looking for validation. I was looking for answers to questions like, am I good enough? And do I have what it takes? And just up until, man, probably 2021, like 2 years ago, I came to discover like I am good enough and I do have what it takes. And all of that started to get unearthed in 2019 when I first went to my first Crucible retreat. But it's from there, it's just this process of working through this stuff. So like Dave said, you're not alone. I get it. And I don't have it all together. And there's still messages that I have to remind myself of who I am. And so I'd encourage you also continue to remind yourself of who you are and who God says you are, even though you might not feel it. And I'll say this too, that what you did is not who you are.
Right.
What you did is not who you are. And oftentimes sometimes depending on our mindset, we judge ourselves based on our worst experiences, and then we begin to tear ourselves down. You are not your worst experience. You're a sum total of the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. But when God looks at you, he says, you are good enough, and you do have what it takes through me. So that's the thing I wanted to say. And now everybody's life is forever changed.
Great.
Yeah.
By the way, we are not sponsored by Crucible, so we don't make any money every time we mention it.
Right. I wish I was.
Because we mention it a lot.
Yeah.
We'd be rich.
If I had a $5,000 for every time I talked about it,
Well,
I'd be really rich.
we'd say it a lot more.
Yeah.
How do you keep your faith when times are challenging?
I'd incorporate it into my prayers.
Yeah.
Like on Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. How do you keep your faith? Say it again.
When times are challenging and it seems like even God isn't listening.
Yeah. You don't. You just give up. No, I'm just joking. Man, yeah, that's so tough. You know, a thing I go back to over and over again is I remind myself that this moment is not every moment. So when times are tough and it's so challenging, it seems like God isn't even listening. How do you keep your faith? You just remember this moment is not every moment. This scene in the movie is not the whole movie, right? There's still more movie left. Now, if you get caught up in this scene, if you get caught up in this moment, it's going to get depressing. It's going to be tough. But you just realize, wait, there's more movie left. And you look back, I look back to see when things were good, when God came through, when I was delivered and rescued and all that stuff. And I remember if he did it then, he'll do it again.
Yeah.
And so where I am now, yeah. Paul talks about these light and momentary troubles that we face in this life. And I don't want to dismiss whatever you're going through because I'm sure it's tough and it's difficult. There's times I'm going through tough, difficult things. I don't want you to dismiss that. But compared to the end of the story, compared to 500 years from now, whatever it is, won't matter or it won't affect me like it does now because I'll be in heaven with Jesus and there's that. So I got to remember the big picture, and that helps me in these moments of despair and darkness and in valleys. And the valley sucks. Can I just say that? Like the darkness sucks. It's terrible. So I don't want to dismiss that either. But it's just knowing this moment is not every moment. And I think I encourage myself with too is James chapter 1, verse 2 through 5, where James says, consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kind. Like when I go through difficulty, I need to consider it joy. Why? Because it's testing me, it's strengthening me, it's making me better. I'm going to learn something on the other end of this, and I'm going to be a better person than I am now. I'm going to be a stronger person than I am now. And so I remind myself of that. I also remind myself that this isn't new. Like Jesus said this would happen. There's this time Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, take heart, in this world you will have trouble. Like you will have trouble. So when trouble comes, when times are low and you feel depressed, be like, yeah, I knew this would happen. Because Jesus said it would. But not like in an Eeyore kind of way, like, oh, woe is me, my life. But it's like, yeah, pretty much. But Jesus says, take heart, I've overcome the world. So you're going to have troubles, but take heart, I've overcome the world. Again, I think Jesus is saying, hey, this moment isn't every moment.
Yeah.
And your strength is found in me. And this surprised you. but it didn't surprise Jesus. Like this thing that happened in your life, that's happening in your life, things that happen in my life, Jesus isn't like, oh man, I didn't see that coming. Like he knew that.
Right.
And he allowed you to go through it. He allows you to walk through it now. Why? Because he knows you have what it takes. And if you feel like you don't have what it takes, he may be using that to say, that's why I need you to rely on me.
Yeah.
And you might press in and say, dear God, I need you like never before because I don't think I can handle this. And Jesus might be saying, you're right, you can't. That's why you need me. So those are just some things that I remind myself. I get a bigger perspective. I remind myself that this moment is not every moment. I look at the end of the movie. I look at where I've been before, and if he did it then, he'll do it again. And so all these things help me stay rooted and grounded on what's true and right. Because if I don't stay rooted and grounded on what's true and right, I'll go off the deep end.
Yeah. A question that just came into, how do you continue to stay focused on your journey with Jesus if your surroundings are on a different path? Kind of in line with the same kind of thinking. So you talked a lot about like reminding yourself, but are there any particular actions that you would say to do?
Yeah, I think, so with surroundings, right? So we're called to be light in a dark world. Jesus said, you're the light of the world.
Right.
People don't light a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand so it gives light to everybody in the room. You are called to be light in a dark world. So sometimes your surroundings are not going to be full of light.
Yeah.
But you know when light shines best?
In the dark?
In the dark. Yeah. Not when there's a bunch of other light around. Now, it's good for you to get in a place like this where there's a bunch of light, you know? But then when you go and your surroundings are dark, you just remind yourself, man, I'm on a mission.
Yeah.
I'm on a mission to see people meet Jesus and journey with him. I'm going to shine my light today. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. I remember, man, when I was in high school, I worked at Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant. And I was a busboy at Chi-Chi's. And if you ever worked in a restaurant, you know people who work in restaurants, some of those miserable people, and they're cussing about you in the back. But I would pull up as a high school student, a Christian. I would pull up in the parking lot, and I would pray every time. I'd say, God, thank you so much for this job. Thank you that I have the opportunity to go into this place today. Help me be a light and help me shine in the darkness. And then when I was there, I would look for ways to open conversations with some of the servers, with some of the cooks. I would hear them talk about their life. I would just ask them questions. But I knew I was on a mission to go into this dark place where the surroundings weren't the best. And I'm going to shine my light because, man, God woke me up today. I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for a reason. And I want to make the most of it.
Yeah.
And I found when I went to Bible college, though, it was my light was less effective, and I got lazy.
Yep.
Because I was in this Christian bubble, and everybody already knew Jesus, and like I wasn't growing. I didn't feel as excited as I was like going in a Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant to like, oh man, what conversations can I have today? How can I question people's thinking today? And not in a argumentative way or anything, but in a loving way. How can I help point people to the light? Man, I was so excited about that. But there are times where if you just stay stuck in that all the time, it'll wear on you. And that's why you got to make this a priority. That's why you got to be in groups. That's why you got to serve.
Well,
that's why you got to listen to what you're about to say.
Well, I was just going to say, because the question is, like, if your surroundings are on a different path, and the chances of that happening to pretty much everybody in here is 100%. But you also have to move and change some of your surroundings sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we talk about, like, we just did this series, Bloodstained Pews, about being a church that is vulnerable and coming together and being in groups, living in community, real community, seeing like, oh, I'm not the only one that's broken. There are other people in this place that are broken. I'm not the only one dealing with this. And when you're open and vulnerable with that, you build this foundation and this container of like, oh man, I can, like God and Jesus have given these people and put them here in my life as a tool for me to continue to move forward. But it's up to me to engage in that. Like I have to jump in with both feet. And so when you talk about continuing to stay focused on your journey, or how do I keep my faith when they're challenging, that's all the time, but you got to keep showing up to some of the surroundings that you purposely put yourself in, intentionally going, maybe for some of us, out of our comfort zone into this group of other people who believe the same thing, so that we can encourage and spur one another on. Almost like a scripture that says that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us not forsake meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing,
Right.
but let us continue to encourage and spur one another on, all the more as we see the day coming, the end of
Yep.
days. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned your first job was was that your first job, Chi-Chi's?
No, that was my second one. My first one was Boston Market.
That's right.
I was a carver at Boston Market, so I carved up the chicken and made turkey
So you went
sandwiches.
from a carver to a busboy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Chi-Chi still around?
No. But they sell salsa in the restaurant.
What
They
happened
sell
to
salsa.
them? Why aren't they still around?
I don't know.
That's all right.
It didn't taste good.
My first job was Cece's.
Cece's Pizza.
Mhm.
And
They're not
Chi-Chi's.
around either,
No,
for good reason.
Yeah.
That
I used to like the spinach pizza.
that
That was my
macaroni and
favorite.
cheese pizza, though, that hits. They also have Bavarian cream, too. That wasn't pizza, or I don't know what it was, but it was good.
A donut.
No, I don't know what it was. We won't talk about that anymore.
But didn't you make it?
What, the pizza?
Didn't you make the stuff?
Bro, I was cleaning
Oh.
up nastiness.
Oh. So you don't know what it was then?
The clientele at Cece's is not your Olive Garden crew, all right? So, hey,
That's a big step up
OG
right there.
is a big step up from the Cece's.
I don't know, man. Olive Garden is like, nah, mushy pasta.
Bro,
It's gross.
Cece's.
I
Self-explanatory.
was the clientele at CC's though.
Rest-
I went to CC.
Rest my case.
Oh, all right, I got
In
you.
middle school and high school, yeah.
No, I went when I was a youth minister working at a church on
Budget.
staff. Budget.
$5
That was
unlimited
it. It was
pizza.
budget. It was budget
You
reasons.
know it's bad if it's $5 for unlimited. Anyways.
Yeah.
So moving on.
And I
One
like the
question that
chicken
comes in
barbecue.
almost every time we do something like this
Yeah.
is the smoking, drinking, I guess cigarettes is smoking, illegal drugs, tattoos, piercings. Like, obviously, we have tattoos,
Yeah.
piercings. What's your thought on all that stuff? Is that
The
sinful?
more the merrier.
Cool.
Just bring it on. No, I'm
Sweet.
just joking.
Of all of it. Tattoos,
Do it
piercings,
all
illegal
of it.
drugs, all the
Every-
stuff. Just
every
keep
bit
doing
of
it.
Yeah, that was the question that was asked.
You won't feel down if you're doing all of those things.
Right. That's how you change your surroundings. No, don't do that. Man, so that was one that came in before, and so I wrote some stuff on that actually. So when it comes to, but apparently it didn't save. When it comes to, so tattoos, that's a question that people ask. But in the Bible it says don't get tattoos. When God says this, he says this in the Old Testament to the people of Israel, and he tells them not to mark their bodies, not because there's anything wrong with marking your bodies. It's because God is speaking to the nation of Israel, and he wants the nation of Israel to be separate and called out and set apart from the rest of the nations. And so there were pagan nations who worshiped other gods who would mark their bodies and put tattoos on, and that was a pagan practice at the time. God tells the people of Israel, hey, don't do that, because he wants them to be set apart and different. Now, we don't live in that kind of culture and society. In getting tattoos now is not a sign to pagan worship in our culture and society. It's more just like, your body is the temple, and so tattoos it's like putting up art. That's putting art on the walls. That's what it is.
Yeah. Choose the art though.
Choose the art. Yeah. No regrets, but spell regrets right. And but also anything else. Yeah. Choose the art. Let it have a meaning and a purpose. And a great verse is whatever you do in word or deed, do it all for the glory of God. And so how does what you put on your body glorify God? So like mine, I have a lion, a warrior, and then an owl, and it's a sculpture of Jesus, and it's the four quadrants of a man: king, warrior, sage, and lover. And it reminds me every day to be the best man that I can be in all these different areas. And so that's what mine are. You have
Mine have none of those meanings.
no, yours.
I have a Roadmaster logo tattoo.
Yeah.
A Darth Vader helmet, a Mando helmet.
And how's that glorifying God, Dave?
No, it's. I got a lot of stories behind it, but we don't have enough time.
Right,
I could relate it
So-
back youth ministry wise.
So the thing with tattoos, when it talks about it in the scriptures, that is a cultural context where God is telling the people of Israel to be set apart and to not engage in the practices of the pagan cultures at that time. When we talk about smoking, marijuana, the scriptures do say to be alert and of sober mind. And I think, I've never smoked marijuana, so I don't know, but I think it intoxicates you to where you're not alert and of sober mind. I don't know. So
I don't have it. Don't look at me. I haven't done it either.
So I think if you're doing something that makes you not alert and of sober mind, if you're intoxicated, that's not God's best for you.
Right.
Now, if you're doing it medically for a medical reason, or like if somebody takes Percocet for pain, or something like that, that I think makes you a little wonky, I think.
But too much of any of that stuff.
Or
Vicodin, Percocet.
Vicodin, any of that. But if you're doing it for a medical reason, for pain or something like that, okay. If you're just doing it recreationally and you're getting intoxicated, I mean, again, the scriptures just say, be alert and of sober mind. So I don't know that that's God's best for you. When it comes to smoking cigarettes, a question I would just ask is, like, we're called to love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, our body. And so does smoking cigarettes help you in loving God with your body, with your physical actions? This also translates to what you eat. Are you physically fit? Because if you can't physically do the works God is calling you to do, that's a hindrance for you in living up to all that God has called you to. And so, oh man, I would love to, I don't know. Do you have an example of like how we serve God with our bodies that we can't, but if we're not physically able to, like?
I mean, I don't have one off the top of my head, but I just think of, I find that hard sometimes because I know some people that have been in some pretty heavy situations when it comes to their body, but they still make it a priority to show up on Sundays.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you want to treat this one body well so that anything and everything that I can do it to glorify God. And so if I abuse my body and treat it like an amusement park and then it breaks down, like I don't understand how any of that would be glorifying to God. We're called to serve, and so if you have the ability to serve, what does that look like? Does it mean just showing up and serving on Sunday, or is it something that you do every single day, always?
Right.
And so if you don't treat your body well or take care of it, and you essentially stop being able to function or serve, you could make that argument. I just think the end goal of this question really is just what you already said, of be of sober mind, take care of your body, and everything that you do it to glorify God.
Yeah.
So I would ask even other questions, like if you're not taking care of your body, how does that glorify God?
Right.
If you're not staying healthy, is that glorifying to God?
Yeah.
Is that something that you think would honor God of, he's given you the very gift of life, and so you're just like, well, I'll just be a potato. Like,
yeah. A lazy potato.
Lazy
That's
potato.
what my kids say.
Lazy potato.
Yeah.
I think that's where I got that from.
Yeah, they said, we want to be lazy potatoes today. Like, no, you can't. Oh, but this, so those marijuana, those tattoos, those smoking cigarettes. Oh, let me talk about food. You know what I found out? Like, orange juice is terrible for you. I was looking at the ingredients. I didn't know this. Not just orange juice, Coke, Coca-Cola, and Coke, like cocaine. But it's all bad for you. But I was looking at the ingredients. When you drink orange juice, it was like 28 grams of sugar or something per serving. It was like 8 ounces. So I took 8 ounces of water, and we had these sugar cubes at our house, and I measured out 28 grams of sugar. It was like 12 or 13 of those sugar cubes. And I was like, there's no way I would sit here and just down all these sugar cubes. But then I started looking at all the sugar content and so much stuff, and I was like, this is horrible. Like, I did this science experiment at our house, and I saw the sugar cubes, and I was like, oh my goodness. So it's really convicted me about the things that I put in my body now.
Poison.
But so not just smoking, but also what you eat. And then, drinking was another thing. So drinking, what we find in the scriptures is that drinking is not a sin.
Right.
Drunkenness is. So if you get drunk, that's a sin. You're intoxicated. You're inebriated. You're not alert and of sober mind. But drinking is not a sin. Now, if you can't drink, and press pause when you need to, you probably shouldn't drink. But we know that drinking isn't a sin because the first miracle Jesus did was he turned water into wine at a wedding, and he made it good. Because the master of the ceremony was like, oh man, this is the good stuff. Why were y'all holding out? And then also we see that Jesus drank as well because people accused him of being a drunkard. He said, I came eating and drinking. John the Baptist came not doing those things. You said he had a demon. You say I'm a drunkard. So which is it? He was talking to the religious leaders at that time, and they just were like ancient Karens back in the day. So drinking is not a sin, but getting drunk is. And so we don't want to do that because it's not God's best for us.
Yeah.
So.
Also, Jesus has a tattoo.
He does.
Revelation 19:16.
Yeah, look it up.
Look it up. So we got a few minutes here, so we'll try and do some.
Time has flown by.
I know.
That's what happens when I'm having fun with you,
We
Dave.
should do it every week. Just this. Always. This is the church.
I don't know if people would come back for that.
I don't know.
Would you come back for that? 2 of you. Nice.
Sure.
We're not doing it.
Sure. We might come back.
People
we
are
might
like,
get out
dear
of bed
God,
for
why
that.
did we show up today?
Oh, man. So there's a lot of questions that came through that were really great. Some of them are.
All right, speed round. Let's go.
Where does your soul go after you die? If you're
I
a
said
Christian?
speed round. Why are you throwing that? That's heavy, man.
If you're a
okay, no,
Christian.
I'm just joking. So, where's your soul go after you die if you're a Christian? To be with God in paradise.
Cool. Is it okay for women to preach in our church?
Yes.
Cool.
They can preach in our church.
They can preach in our church. Great. We already asked that one.
But there's other things all around that.
Yeah.
We don't have time to get into speed
We don't
round.
have to it. Well, some of these questions, as I'm looking at them, are not really speed round questions. Can you explain? Well, we've kind of done that. You don't have to go to church to be a good Christian. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
Cool.
Because Jesus died for the church. Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, gave his entire life to starting local churches. Why? Because the church is the hope of the world. The writer of Hebrews said, let us not forsake meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. Meeting together is gathering together as the church. So, if you are a Christian, is that you don't have to go to church to be a good Christian.
That's what the question implies. I think it's the wrong question.
You can be a Christian following Jesus, but if you want to be a good Christian, there are a bunch of one another commands that we can only do as the church. And so if I don't show up to the local gathering and I don't get involved and participate in that, I miss out on all those opportunities to do all those one another's that are in the scriptures. And why would I want to miss out on that?
Right.
And the other thing, this is supposed to be a speed round. The other thing about being part of a church is this. If you think, well, I don't have to go to church, okay, fine. Maybe you don't need anything from it. I'd say stop being so selfish because maybe some other people need you. And because you're not there, they're going to miss out on the blessing that you give.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, man, all right, sorry.
He about to stand up.
All right, sorry. Yeah, man, we got it. And I take this personal because this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is kind of my career. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So how about this? We'll get to a lot of these questions in another format, but I think this is a good one to end on. How do I know when I'm ready for a relationship with God?
I think you're ready for a relationship with God when you realize that you don't have it all together and you can't do this on your own. As long as you try and do this on your own and you try and figure it out and you try and solve it and you try to, when you realize you don't have it all together and you need help. There's a story that Jesus tells about a guy who owed, it was $10 billion. It was a ridiculous amount he could never pay back. And the king said, okay, we're going to sell you and your family to pay off the debt, and he pleaded with him, please, I'll pay it all back. And the king said, you know what? I'll forgive it all. He forgave him his debt. And then the guy went out, and he found another guy who owed him some money, like maybe $10,000. And he started choking him. He said, pay back what you owe me. And then the king finds out about this, and he's like, wait, I just forgave you this huge debt you never could have paid back. How come you didn't forgive this other person? I think maybe one of the reasons why the guy didn't forgive this other person who owed him like $10,000 is because even though he was forgiven, I think in his mind, he might have thought, I'm going to figure out how to pay this back. And so I'm going to go collect the debts that people owe me. As long as you think that you can fix this on your own, you're not ready. Because you're going to jump through religious hoops and obstacles. You're going to try and do this on your own. Like, a relationship with Jesus is knowing you don't have it all together. You are not perfect, but he makes you perfect, and he forgives you and loves you and wants to take you on a journey, and you say, I'm in for the ride. If you're not in for the ride, like you believing some things or saying the right things, like it's saying, I'm all in with you. I'm going to follow wherever you lead. I'm going to go there, and that's what I want to do. So if you believe that Jesus died for you on the cross, he rose again from the dead, and you believe that so much where you want to give him your life and follow him, you're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready. And that's what my son is saying. I want to follow Jesus. I want to be in with him. And so he's getting baptized next week. If you want to go all in with Jesus and be in with him and follow him on this journey, you're ready. And if you've never been baptized, that's the next step. To be immersed into him, to have your sins forgiven and washed away. So that's how you know when you're ready to go on that journey. You say, God, I can't do this on my own. That's why I need you. And that's why we celebrate communion every week. In your chair, there's cups with some bread and juice. And the bread, it just reminds us of Jesus' body that was broken on the cross. The juice reminds us of his blood that was shed on the cross. We take communion every week, not as a ritual, but as a reminder that I need grace, that I need help, that I need hope. And I have that grace, I have that help, I have that hope through Jesus because of the sacrifice he made for me on the cross. And so, if you need to say yes to him, do that. Be baptized into him. Continue on in the journey. But if you've already said yes to him, can this just be a reminder for you that you're loved, you're good enough, you have what it takes to be the light in a dark place this week? To live for a higher purpose and mission? Because Jesus thought you were worth dying for. And I don't want us to ever take that for granted. So that's why we take communion. If you're good, let me just pray for you as we take communion. God, we thank you so much for your love, grace, and mercy. Thank you for the sacrifice you made for us on the cross. Thank you that you are the answer. You're the answer. You're the answer to any and every question. You're the answer to all the questions we have in life. You are the answer. Thank you for showing us the way. I pray you continue to do that. In Jesus' name, amen.